Hello and welcome to Casual Veteran Gamer. In this video today we are looking at the Monk class. In case you couldn't tell, this is using a mod. This isn't the official class released by Larian. This is in patch 7. So what are monks? Here's a description from the mod maker. Monks eschew training with weapons and armor and instead hone themselves, body and mind, into inscrutable instruments of battle. One way I like to think about the monk class is having a character a bit like Jackie Chan, all going all around the place, fists flying, jumping around, doing stunts. Before I go any further, I just want to say, I guess, thank you to the mod maker, Cygirl88. And I know that a few people helped her, including Lost Soul. So this is a mod that Cygirl88 has made, and they have been updating it recently. In fact, it was last updated just 3 days before I started recording this video. Anyway, let's start looking at the class. So we get 2 class features to begin with. Unarmored defense. So when not wearing armor or having a shield equipped, your AC armor class is equal to 10 plus, it says plus dexterity plus wisdom. I think it really means plus dexterity modifier plus wisdom modifier. Now monks aren't proficient with any armor anyway. For those of you who aren't versed in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, what you can't do is think, oh, right, they're not proficient in any armors, but I know that some races are, such as Githyanki. Look, got medium armor proficiency. If you picked a race just like this and then equipped, so let's say the Githyanki half-plate quite early on, your armor class would still just be 15 plus dexterity. When we come back to unarmored defense, it's when you're not wearing any armor. If you add any armor, that extra armor class from the wisdom disappears. So there's not necessarily much point in picking a race that has proficiency with some light armor or medium armor. Secondly, the other class feature at level 1, martial arts. Use your dexterity instead of strength, whichever is higher, for unarmed attacks and attacks with monk weapons. Now as part of the mod, it doesn't really tell us what monk weapons are, but this is a bit unfortunate because monk weapons are weapons that monks are proficient with, but we don't have a list here, which is a bit sad. It would be nice to add that in. But it's a minor nitpick, you know. I understand this is a mod made by a fan, not being paid or anything. You know, my expectations are not in a bad way, but my expectations are a bit lower, you know, or my tolerance for things not being perfect is lower. I'm going to go to ability points next before coming back to race, because what ability points we need might affect what race you choose. So monks are one of the most mad classes. And again, for those of you not versed in 5th edition, mad is multiple ability score dependent or multiple ability dependent, meaning they've got many different ability scores that they really depend on to be good or to perform well in combat. So they need dexterity because this applies to their melee attacks and their armor class and initiative and all the skills that go with dexterity. They definitely need wisdom as well because this affects their armor class and some other abilities they get later on. And you really need a decent enough constitution because you're going to be in melee, you're going to be getting hit. And your armor class is never going to be really high either. So you really don't want a low constitution. I know everybody wants a decent constitution, but we already want a high dexterity and wisdom also. Strength will help us jump further. So it'd be nice to have a high strength. That's not as important though. It will help shove if needed. So thinking about the fact that we need a good dexterity, wisdom and constitution, when we look at races, what races could be good? Maybe high elf, but if you're going to go for an elf, a wood elf is definitely the one to go for because they've got dexterity and wisdom. Also, fleet of foot is always great, having that extra 5 feet of movement, and you get proficiency in stealth and perception anyway. These proficiencies here, well, monks are already proficient with short swords. Long swords aren't finesse, so that's not so important. Probably wouldn't get any use out of that. But being proficient with the longbow and short bow is okay. Dark vision and Fey ancestry is always good. Maybe a drow for the extra dexterity. And hand crossbow proficiency could be good as well, actually. Human is good because it just gives you extra stat bonuses. Because if we come to ability points, let's actually start putting some of these in. Let's put that down to 10. Dexterity, definitely want at 16. Wisdom's okay at 14, although you could put it at 16, wouldn't be so bad either. And with one ability point left over, maybe that, or if we maybe trying to min-max a tiny bit, just put the rest into strength just to get a higher jump distance. Half elves could be good because you get to choose 2 plus 1s. We have a charisma plus 2, but that's not going to be so useful for a monk necessarily. But yeah, maybe a half elf if you want to have one of the other abilities that come from the elves, like the drow cantrips, or cantrip from high half elf, or the wood half elf if you want the proficiency and movement speed. I'm going to make, what am I going to do? I'm going to make a human because we can get the nice ability scores here. We get to pick 2 skills out of these 6. And I'm going to add stealth and athletics because that helps us shove a bit better. Obviously for your origin, you don't have to be an acolyte. That's up to you. Appearance, up to you. And I'm going to go for a very stereotypical monk here. Pick a head at random. And what am I going to call them? For those Terry Pratchett fans out there, I'm going to call them Lutzav instead of Lutzi from the book Thief of Time. All right, and Acolyte is probably quite a good background for him as well. So here we are on the Nautiloid, literally just loaded the game, started the game. First thing we can notice is actually he's in his undergarments, so this must be that this blue Shaolin robe isn't actually in the mod that I downloaded. but we're given a choice of a few others, so let's give them the white one. Also worth noting here, since it wasn't in the character creation screen, that monks are proficient with all simple weapons plus short swords. Now, a few things that are a bit different is they've got this, it says martial arts die, actually there should be key, although in 5th edition, monks don't get key until level 2. I think it's probably easier for the mod maker just to stick it in from level 1. We've also got this bonus unarmed strike, which uses a bonus action. So if you make an attack, actually, since this is Baldur's Gate 3, not 5th edition, with your bonus action, you can make an unarmed strike, which is currently, the damage for it is 1d4, and it will be using dexterity. As we level up, but not before level 5, as we level up, the damage die does go up to 1d6, then 1d8, and eventually 1d10, but that's very high level. The first time it jumps up is at level 5, which we can't get to in early access, or at least not without mods. One thing that this mod changes, I'm not sure why, this is probably the only real thing that I'd really want to be changed, is that the jump action now doesn't use bonus action. I don't know if that's a bug or something done on purpose by the mod maker, but the reason I want it to change is that if I can do it, so too will the enemies be able to do it. And it turns jump into like a bit like fly. So it uses some movement speed, 12 feet, which is a bit strange because normally it would use 10 to jump 18 feet. In this case, the jump distance is dependent on strength, which is why I was trying to put it as high as possible. And if we look at the armor class, it's 16, right? 10 from unarmored defense, plus 3 from dexterity modifier, and plus 3 from wisdom modifier. And we've got a short sword with us also. Now, one thing that isn't explained in the mod particularly well, at least not without some trial and error, is the idea of monk weapons and how we attack with them and what abilities are used with them. So you can see here I've got the Quarterstaff equipped and it says shout status, and it says condition this weapon gains the finesse property. This comes from the fact that in 5th edition, when monks use a monk weapon, which is basically everything they're proficient with, so we've got these simple weapons and short swords, then they can use dexterity as their attack modifier. So we attacked, it had plus 3 from dexterity, and the damage roll was 3 and 1d8, plus 3 from dexterity, whereas normally a quarterstaff you would expect to be using strength. And so now, since we are a monk, we can now use an unarmed attack as a bonus action. We'll only do 1d4 damage. That's all we needed. So 1d4 plus the dexterity modifier, which in this case is 3. This is better than the normal dual wielding, at least without 2-weapon fighting style, because we do get the dexterity modifier added to the offhand attack, whereas you'd normally need to be a fighter or ranger and have taken the 2-weapon fighting style. If I pick up the battle axe, just want to show you one more thing. Since it's not a monk weapon, when I equip it, it doesn't get the finesse property all of a sudden. But if I equip the quarterstaff, there we are, shout status, I guess this is just how the mod works, right? Monk weapon, it now gains the finesse property. So I've got the monk up to level 2, and we can see that there are quite a few new features. First one is unarmored movement. Your movement speed is increased by 10 feet. This is supposed to be why you're not wearing any armor. Then under this new, we've got Flurry of Blows 2 targets and Flurry of Blows double strike. They seem to be repeated, I'm not really sure why. So what Flurry of Blows is, instead of attacking once with your bonus action, you can attack twice. But this uses a resource called a key point, and I think this is more a limitation of the game engine rather than something from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. You can either do Flurry of Blows against 2 separate targets or both attacks on the same target. We also have other uses of key apart from just attacking twice with the bonus action. One is called Step of the Wind. You can dash or disengage as a bonus action and double your jump distance for that turn. And then we have Patient Defense. As a bonus action, attacks against you have disadvantage for 1 turn. It might be because the Step of the Wind that they changed jump to not being a bonus action. I'm still not sure it's really worth it just to get the double your jump distance. If that's what's happened, I don't really know. So let's have a quick look. So yeah, our movement speed is now 40 feet. We've got key points now, 2 of them. They replenish on a short rest, or a bit like the superiority dice for the Battle Master. I'm not going to use any of these right now, but I'll show you a use of Flurry of Blows very soon. Before I show you Flurry of Blows, I'm just going to show you why I don't really agree with the fact that jump isn't a bonus action. If I use Step of the Wind and dash, so my movement is doubled for the turn, and it says double your jump distance for a turn. So I've now got 80 feet of movement, as I should. And I can start here. Now bear in mind I am in turn-based mode, so you can see that this is how far I can move in 1 turn. With a monk, if I set this up nicely. Oh, why not? Let's jump up to here. And so I'm jumping now using 12 feet of movement, but I'm actually moving 55 feet. And I can do this for quite a long time. There seems to be no limitation on how many times I can jump. If I really wanted to, I guess I could dash again. Get an extra 40 feet, so I can jump 3 more times. And I can, if I headed straight there, I could probably could have got to the Druid Grove in 1 turn, if not maximum 2 turns. It just doesn't quite seem right to me that I can move that far for the use of a single key point and a single bonus action, and an action, to be fair. Now, I did make a character that could run a long way, but that used up like a haste potion, all the actions and bonus actions. It wasn't even that was running, not even jumping. Imagine if we had the actual jump spell on this character, which triples your jump distance. Plus, we could also have all the items that add movement speed and jump around for free. It's the one thing that I don't agree with in this mod. Here, I'm going to show you how Flurry of Blow works. So we've got 2 options. Flurry of Blows, 2 targets. So you strike 2 targets in melee as a bonus action. This is a bit like Horde Breaker for rangers, that the little, looks like roughly 5-foot radius comes out from where you're targeting, and it looks like it's going to hit both of them. Or you can choose to do Flurry of Blows, double strike the target twice as a bonus action when you spend a key point. Both of these do require a key point. I'm going to try the 2 targets. It looks like they're both highlighted. Now, unfortunately, it didn't really work, right? Because the other target didn't get hit, or either wasn't even an attack against the second target. So I'm going to reload and show you why, if you're going to use this mod, you may as well go for double strike. So I'm back here in exactly the same situation. I saved it just before I made that attack. If we go for double strike, where we hit that guy, we killed him, and we get this new option in our bar, which says Monk Unarmed Attack, doesn't use any bonus action or action, doesn't use a key point, can actually take the second attack. So I would advise, if you're going to use this mod and use Flurry of Blows, definitely just always use double strike. Anyway, Flurry of Blows is really, I think it's quite cool. It means the monk, if they use a key point, can get 3 attacks in 1 turn. 2 of them will be the unarmed attack, which at the moment is 1d4 plus dexterity modifier, and that's quite good. It's quite cool. One nice thing, I haven't really mentioned it yet about monks, is we don't really need to worry about armor, so we don't have to think about what we're going to pick up there. We don't really need to worry about our weapon too much. Maybe a Quarterstaff +1 would be good. However, since they don't have proficiency with light armor, they won't be able to wear any helmets or many gloves, only some boots. So there is a bit of a downside. So here is our monk at level 3, and there's quite a lot to unpack here. So first of all, we get a new class feature, regardless of which subclass we pick, being Deflect Missiles. While enabled, spend your reaction to deflect the first ranged attack aimed at you each turn. This doesn't use a key point, and there are quite a few enemies that do have ranged attacks, so this can come in useful for sure. In 5th edition, instead of completely deflecting the first ranged attack, you do reduce the damage that is incoming from that ranged attack. Every level, monks get a new class feature, or an ability score improvement. One of the very few classes that gets something new every single level. And then we've got a choice of subclass. Now, the mod maker has gone well out of their way to reproduce all the subclasses across all of the different books from 5th edition. The 3 in the player's handbook are Way of the 4 Elements, Way of the Open Hand, and Way of the Shadow. These other subclasses come from other books released for 5th edition. Now, starting with Way of the 4 Elements, this is widely seen as easily the worst monk class by players of 5th edition, I would say. If you go to the internet and look up worst subclasses for any class, Way of the 4 Elements won't necessarily be the top, but it's going to be up there. Before I tell you why, let's actually look at the subclass. These monks bend the 4 elements at will, becoming avatars of balance. Obviously, the mod maker is referring to a certain anime, being Avatar: The Last Airbender. And you get to pick essentially 2 class passives, which are mostly, not completely, but mostly reproductions of spells that use up key points to cast. Now, I think one of the reasons it's seen as bad for 5th edition, it's kind of maybe twofold. The main point is that lots of these spells use key points, like 2 or 3 key points to cast, and monks only have a number of key points equal to their level. And until you get to quite a high level, you just don't have that many key points, so you can't really cast that many spells, as it were. And the choice of spells isn't always necessarily amazing. I mean, you can understand why some of them have been chosen. We've got Fist of 4 Thunders, which is just casting Thunderwave, which is cool, but it uses up, it doesn't say here, but it uses up 2 key points. And we're only going to have 3 per short rest at the moment. So until you're level 4, we can only cast this 3 times in a day, and it's only a level 1 spell, and it uses up your action, so you can't be attacking. We've got Fangs of the Fire Snake, so hit either a single target 3 times or 3 different targets as an action when you spend a key point, dealing damage equal to your martial art die, plus the strength or dexterity modifier, whichever one's highest, and it does fire damage. That's okay. Fire damage is probably the most resisted type of damage. Fist of 4 Thunders just casts Thunderwave, and the DC for these spells will be equal to 8 plus your proficiency modifier plus your wisdom modifier. This is where your wisdom comes in and be important again for monks. We've got Fist of Unbroken Air, channel key to create a blast of compressed air that strikes like a mighty fist. This targets a single enemy rather than multiple enemies. It could do between it's 3d10 damage, which is kind of cool, but it costs 2 key points, so there's quite a lot of what you'll have. Rush of Gale Spirits, which casts Gust of Wind, and which can push enemies one way or the other, and again costs 2 key points. Sweeping Cinder Strike is just Burning Hands, as a wizard would cast it, and Water Whip, strike a target a bit like the Fist of Unbroken Air. So the Fist of Unbroken Air can push a target away from you by 15 feet, but Water Whip can pull it towards you, or knocking it prone, probably a bit better for a monk. But again, these all cost 2 key points each, so you can use these once per short rest at level 3, maybe twice per short rest at level 4, and that's also not including the fact that you can use key points to do extra unarmed attacks. I think that's where the complaint of not having enough key points comes in, because you want to be using them just for Flurry of Blows anyway, let alone using them for casting spells. Way of the Long Death, there's only one thing here. When you reduce a creature to 0 hit points with a melee attack, you gain temporary hit points equal to Wisdom modifier plus level. So again, having a high wisdom will help you gain more temporary hit points. This is a bit like the Warlock's passive that you can get, that when you kill an enemy, you get some temporary hit points. Very, very similar. Way of the Open Hand, toggle to set Flurry of Blows, presume it means, to knock the target prone, push the target away, or prevent the target from taking reactions. This is kind of nice. You get a choice of which 3 things you get to do, and these just happen when you use Flurry of Blows, that when you use a key point anyway, so you're not using extra key points to make these things happen. Way of the Shadow, until level 4 anyway, gives them spells to cast based on kind of illusion, so you can learn the minor illusion cantrip, and then you can spend 2 key points to cast either Darkness, Silence, Dark Vision, or Pass Without Trace. It'd be kind of nice if this gave you Dark Vision, this subclass, but it doesn't. Way of the Sun Soul essentially gives you a ranged attack. This 1d4 is equal to your martial art die, so you can attack people from range for 1d4 plus your dexterity modifier, or you can do it multiple times using an extra key point. So notice this one here just uses a bonus action. On the right, hurl a flurry of 3 Searing Bolts is using a key point to do that. Essentially, ranged Flurry of Blows. Way of Mercy is kind of cool. You gain proficiency in medicine and insight and have advantage on medicine checks. Then you can you've got Healing Hand. Spend 1 key point to touch a creature to heal them, equal to your martial arts die, plus wisdom modifier. Again, wisdom coming in there. Or, I think this is kind of cool. Replace one of your Flurry of Blow strikes with the use of Healing Hands. So you can be standing next to an enemy, hit them, then run up to your ally and heal them with your fists. Way of the Kensei, Agile Parry, when you have your Kensei weapon equipped. So something that isn't really mentioned here in the level up screen is we get to choose these class passives, but the class passive isn't descriptive. You can turn one of these weapons into a Kensei weapon, effectively a monk weapon. One has to be melee, one has to be ranged, and notice that some of these are martial weapons as well. I would probably go with Warhammers because there are a couple of magical Warhammers, such as the Intransigent Warhammer, whereas most of the rest of these, maybe not all of them, but most of them don't have any particularly special weapons, and you get to pick a ranged weapon. Warhammer. I'd probably pick hand crossbows. Yeah, because we can use our bonus action to attack normally. Anyway, Agile Parry, when you have your Kensei weapon equipped and you make an unarmed attack on your turn, you gain +2 armor class until the start of your next turn. So you can do this every single round, as long as you've got your bonus action to use, making your armor class for this character be up to 18 almost constantly. Obviously, the first round of combat, anyone who goes before them will have the lower armor class, but from then on, they should be able to keep that up. And Kensei Shot deal 1d4 additional weapon damage when you attack with a ranged Kensei weapon and spend a bonus action. Sounds a little bit similar to having something like Hunter's Mark or Hex up, but for whoever you hit, you deal an extra 1d4 damage. But the nice thing in general is that you do get to add an extra weapon to be a monk weapon. Way of the Drunken Master, whenever you use Flurry of Blows, you gain the benefit of the disengage action, and your walking speed increases by 10 feet, but you do have to spend a key point to get Flurry of Blows. It's not every single attack, every single turn, and you're also pretending to be drunk the whole time. And Way of the Astral Self, you get these astral arms, which use your wisdom modifier to attack. If you knew you're going to be an astral monk, or Way of the Astral Self, you could just pump up wisdom to be absolutely maximum, and then your attacks then have a 10-foot range instead of just 5 foot, and they deal force damage instead, which is generally pretty good because not many things are resistant to force damage. It does say while you have Astral Arms active, you can spend a key point to activate your Astral Visage if you have it. This is something past level 4, we level 6, which I'm not going to get to in this video. Each of these, apart from maybe Way of the 4 Elements, just because of the use of key. And Way of the Shadow kind of suffers a little bit the same as Way of the 4 Elements. Like, these spells are okay, they're not bad spells, but they use 2 key points, which leaves fewer for attacking more in combat. I'm going to go for Way of the Open Hand. For me, this is like the archetypal type of monk. I'm not going to show you all of these in this video. Part of that is because I'm not actually quite sure how many of these will make it to the final game. My assumption is we'd probably get 4 elements, Open Hand and Shadow, to begin with. But obviously, I'm not certain on that. I don't have any inside information. So I'm in the middle of combat against the gnolls. I'm doing right. I've turned the Flint against the other gnolls using the Illithid power. This is a mod thing. I guess it's a bug. It might take a bit of time to fix. So in the Druid Grove, I bought Corellan's Grace for the monk because I thought, you know, if the wielder is attacked while not wearing armor, they receive a 1d4 bonus to saving throws. That sounds all good. However, I think because it's a magical staff, it doesn't count as a monk weapon in the mod, which is a mistake. So you can see here I've got a 60% chance to hit. If I highlight the unarmed strike for my bonus action, I've got a 70% chance to hit because currently the monk is going to be using his strength. And we can see the damage is 2 to 9, which is just a +1 from strength. Whereas if it had been using dexterity, it should have been 4 to 11. So it's actually a bit of a mistake to have equipped Corellan's Grace in terms of damage. Earlier, I had talked about how jumping was a free action. And I spoke to Lost Soul. He isn't the mod creator, but he's kind of managing the mod for the moment. And I talked to him and said, like, look, having a free jump is just a bit too much. You can just jump around everywhere. And he messaged back saying he doesn't want to change the vision of the mod, and I completely understand that. So you can see I jumped with Lae'zel, and she can't jump again. It didn't use a bonus action. Instead, Lost Soul changed it to be once per turn, which for now, considering it's a mod and this isn't Lost Soul's actual mod, I think it's a fair compromise. And also, I don't know how much work all of this takes. I'm not a modder whatsoever. I've never done any sort of modding. One thing I would kind of like to see is that jump is a bonus action. However, if the monk uses Step of the Wind, they gain jump as a free action. But I don't know how much work that takes. So I just kind of want to also say thank you to Lost Soul because he got back to me really, really quickly, like within an hour or something. In fact, within 5 minutes now I'm looking at the chat and the time logs. And then literally within 45 minutes, he'd updated a mod and added a file to Nexus. So although it's not exactly what I want, so very thankful of Lost Soul. Even if it's not perfect, I still think this is a fair compromise considering how quickly it came out. Unfortunately, I wasn't recording when I just got attacked by a fire arrow, I think, from this goblin Sharpeye. So the monk and Lae'zel were down here. They just climbed down the ladder together. Standing together is never a good idea, but never mind. And the goblin Sharpeye used the fire arrow, though it just says blasted, against Lae'zel and the monk. And the wooden ladder took 8 fire damage. And then we can see the Sharpeye was just before Shadowheart's turn, and the monk's passive feature of like deflecting missiles, what it actually did is it allowed him to roll an attack back at him, as I think this is supposed to be him throwing the missile back, and so the goblin Sharpeye took 7 damage. So it isn't working exactly as I described earlier, and this is perhaps a bit more powerful than what it should be. I'm not sure that we should be giving damage back based on our main attack roll. It's like a free attack at range, which is nice obviously, but it's not quite how it really works in 5th edition. And talking about 5th edition, I do just want to go back to the whole jumping thing, because one of the reasons that having jumping have a single use per turn rather than always using a bonus action is that in 5th edition, jumping costs movement only, but you can't jump as far in 5th edition as you can in Baldur's Gate 3. So yeah, it's all about compromise and what's already in the game, what's easy to make happen for the mods. At level 4, monks get a feature called Slow Fall. What Slow Fall does in 5th edition is when the monk is going to take full damage, or damage from a fall, they can use their reaction to reduce that amount of damage by 5 times their monk level. So at this point, the monk should be able to reduce their full damage taken by 20, because they're level 4, times by 5, and 5 times 4 is 20. The modder has made this, you only take 20% of falling damage, and I can kind of see perhaps why they've done this, because at the moment in Baldur's Gate 3, most of the full damage that we take is far, far less than 20, unless you jump a stupidly long way, which is actually what this slow fall feature is supposed to prevent, I suppose. I'm not sure how I feel about this, because it feels like it's kind of not taking the full class ability from 5th edition, but I'm guessing this is a nice, easy way to mod it into the game. So I guess it's a fair compromise. And at level 4, like every other class, we get an ability score improvement or a feat. One obvious thing to take is +2 dexterity. That increases the armor class, the initiative, the damage output, and so on. Nothing wrong with that. A couple of feats that you could perhaps do with, although we can't wear armor and get the benefit of unarmored defense with light armor. Having light armor proficiency would give monks the ability to wear some helmets, such as a helmet of a haste helmet, and some braces as well, or gauntlets, and perhaps some boots later on. So there is a benefit to having light armor proficiency. If you're building your monk, you could also make your dexterity an odd number and perhaps choose a wood elf. So your dexterity starts at 17, then you can choose this and put it up to 18. I probably wouldn't go for any of the magic initiate feats, just because the monk is a melee class. They're not likely to be able to cast spells that often. If you were going to do it though, I would go for clerical druid, because the spell casting modifier is wisdom. Mobile is also going to be good because it stacks with the increased speed that monks naturally get, so they can get faster and faster. And that's kind of one of the points of monks, is that they are able to zip around, get around the battlefield, get into and out of sticky situations, go and help who's most in need. I probably wouldn't choose any other feats that we currently have for a monk. However, I am just going to go with +2 dexterity, because it's just going to be probably the best thing to do for the monk. Or I was just thinking now, also, if I did take the lightly armored feat, I could put my strength up to 14, since it's on an odd number already, just to help increase all those things that go along with strength. Alright, something that's made me regret take Way of the Open Hand is they're supposed to be able to apply different status effects to the Flurry of Blow attack. So I'm going to use my main hand attack on Trucker Barrel. Kills him. That's nice. And then we can see I've got trip status condition. You're going to trip someone. But every time I've tried to use Flurry of Blows like that, just nothing happens. Right? I even with the second unarmored attack, that hasn't, even when that hits, that hasn't caused them to be tripped up. And I've just reloaded. I'm just going to try again. This time it says push status. You can see here, push status. You're going to push someone. So main hand attack on this guy. Yep. Works again. Hit this guy. Not pushed. And again, not pushed. And there's no saving throw made here. And just doesn't seem to have worked at all. So at the moment, the Way of the Open Hand isn't really working, which is a bit sad. So I've basically got a monk without a subclass in this playthrough. The next monk I make is not going to be Way of the Open Hand. I'm definitely going to pick a different one. So overall, it's nice to be able to play as a monk. It's a decent enough mod, but I would say this is more of a preview of what could come rather than what's definitely going to come. I don't believe that Larian will probably make the same design choices as the modder made. And I'm not just including the things that aren't quite working, but the thing about jump, like even jump just once per turn is a bit too much for someone with a high strength. Like for 12 feet of movement, they can now move 28 feet and still be able to hide. Or take a bonus action for the poisoning or healing or whatever we use a bonus action for. Also, I'm not sure how they're going to implement different things. I don't think they're going to make the Deflect Arrows just do an attack back. But this is fan-made. This is for free. No one's forced this person to make it. They're not being paid for it either. So I am happy that we get to play the monk. I'm also not sure what subclasses will be included and what Larian will actually do with the subclasses. Because for the Barbarian, the Wild Heart is... Well, there isn't a Wild Heart as such for Barbarians in 5th edition. So even though we've got a preview of the subclasses, of the monk subclasses in this mod, there's no way to know how things will change, what things will get included or chucked out, what will make the cut, what won't. So let me know what you think of this monk mod as well. And thank you to Cygirl for making it, and to Lost Soul for keeping it up to date. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.